You're about to be honored, as I am, with the presence of two of the most powerful women in the United States. All weekend long now, of Thursday and Friday, you've been talking about energy goals, energy policies, energy challenges. These are two women who can make those energy goals a reality. Two United States senators. Would you please welcome United States Senator Mary Landrieu of Louisiana and United States Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska.
And go from there. For all of us, and I know many from Louisiana, but from all over the country, there's really been a game changer in literally the last few years on the subject of natural gas reserves. I've had people in the industry represented here come to my office in steady streams, and Lisa has had the same, over the last 2 years saying, Senator, we are discovering more gas in more places than we knew ever existed. Gas in deep wells, onshore, offshore, but shallow as well. Shale, finding gas in shale formations because there are new technologies that allow this gas to be found. That is going to have, I believe, a profound effect in many ways. One, because natural gas can meet some of our new reduced carbon standards, and it's a cleaner fuel, it's a cleaner burning fuel, and it can be a baseload fuel, which all of you in the traditional oil and gas industry, generally understand. And the exciting thing about this gas that's being found is it's not just in Oklahoma, it's not just in Louisiana, it's not just in Texas, it's not just Alaska, and we're one of the largest gas producing states in the Union. But we're finding it in New York and in Pennsylvania and in Arkansas. So it's building support for the kind of appropriate natural gas that can be used to transform perhaps some of our vehicles. Instead of running on gasoline, you've seen what Boone Pickens has said, you've seen what some of our own folks are promoting, the idea of converting some of our transportation vehicles, because the transportation sector is the sector that basically uses most of the oil. The electricity sector uses mostly coal. And the idea is to get both of those sectors a little bit less reliant on coal, unless we can clean it and really scrub it, a little bit less reliant on oil because it's coming from foreign sources, and try to use domestic, clean, and renewable. Now, gas isn't renewable, but it is clean. Then we can move to some of the renewables, which is very exciting, what's happening in solar as well as wind. But the simple part of this is when it's cloudy, the sun goes away, and you can't produce energy from your solar panels or solar voltaics from that system. And when the wind doesn't blow, neither do the turbines turn. So the idea is to have a combination. It's not going to just be all solar or all wind, and we think that gas is significant. And the final point on this, for those of us in the Gulf Coast, because we're a big gas producer like Alaska, because we now have revenue sharing secured, which both Lisa, Senator Murkowski, and her father before her, and the senators from Alaska helped secure for Louisiana. For the first time, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama will get a percentage of those funds that come off of our offshore oil and gas. A lot of it is deep gas off of our shore. We could then use those taxes that are generated to invest right back in our coast, saving our wetlands, building our levees, and building our flood control. And Lisa's absolutely correct, but the big picture is this. The industry, governments run some of this, but in America, the private industry is running this. Private industry has to get capital. People don't give their money to companies to lose money. They give their companies to make money. So the big problem here is that the price of carbon keeps fluctuating in oil and gas so high that these oil companies, look, they'll make money any way they can. Right now they can make it in oil and gas, but if they could make it in algae, they would. The government, the Congress has to figure out how to and that's what this whole climate change debate is, and trying to figure, should we put a tax on carbon? Should we start a cap and trade program? How do we put a price on carbon so the market can adjust to it? Right now, that price is subsidized and hidden and not transparent in a million ways. It's too complicated even, for all of us together to understand. But the deal is, if you can price it correctly, the industry can then calibrate around it, and they can decide, okay, well, we're going to invest in algae, or we're going to invest in wind. That's what this big debate is about. But you're right. Let me just but challenge one thing. I don't think we'll ever phase out completely the oil and gas industry. It's going to be around for a long time. It will sort of remold and remodify itself, and I think we'll maybe emphasize more natural gas, maybe less oil. But part of this is not just America. Part of this is you can't go to China right now that has, 1,000 years of coal. They have a supply, they're building a coal plant, what, 1 a day? 4 a day. They're building 4 coal plants a day. Now, people are not in the middle class. They want to be in the middle class, just like when we were a young country and our people were poor, now we're wealthier. We can't, as America, go to them and say, sorry, we're not letting you use your coal. Sorry to Africa. I just had a meeting with many of the ambassadors from these countries just this week. Sorry, you can't develop your oil and gas resources. The world's decided to go a different way. So this is a big challenge for our president and for our Congress. We have to sort of encourage them to develop their resources, minimize their footprint, share our new technologies with them, and help move the whole world to a greener place. This is a big job, and it's very complicated.
When oil and gas are available and reasonably priced, we tend to forget about a long-range fuel and energy policy, which I think we're in kind of right now. We've just learned there is an abundance of natural gas. The prices are tolerable. And from this meeting here, the summit here, and also from the practicality of, I just know from business, the renewable resources are expensive. The energy companies will have to retool, and cars will have to be retooled as well. Do you see how do you see the possibility of the legislation with the federal government mandating a percentage of industry utilities making a small percentage of the energy that they generate a renewable resource, and how on earth could you vote for something that will, quote, raise our utility bills? How can we look for the long term, and yet I know politically you all can't want someone saying, well, she voted to raise our utility bills.
This efficiency argument for us is important because our petrochemical industry and our industry and across the board say to me, Senator, you can save energy or you can be renewable in 2 different ways. You can either be more efficient and not produce it in the first place, which meets the objective, or you can produce it from non-carbon base. So what we're saying to the country is, don't just put a 15% renewable portfolio standard on us. Let us meet our climate goals by making ourselves be more efficient, and our industry can do that. And so while I'm not sure 15% with a 4% efficiency is I'm not prepared at this moment to vote for that because I do fear it will raise rates. We have to get to a point where you've got to sort of set a goal or incentivize some renewables, or there won't be enough push to the industry to encourage them to go in that way. But if you push too hard, you're going to raise rates. One other thing. Have you all thought about this? I'm sure you have, those of you that are experts in this field. But just because there's a lot of sunshine, and there's a lot in the deserts out west, which is where the big push for solar is coming, and also wind. There's a lot of wind in North Dakota, I've discovered. I haven't been there, but I hear about all this wind. There's a lot in North Dakota because the senators are the big advocates of wind, which is, our jobs get very interesting because the senators from Tennessee do not want windmills anywhere around the Smoky Mountains, okay? And all the senators from the West can't wait to put up as many as they can. So this is a very interesting debate we have on the floor of the Senate. But anyway, and some people off the coast of Massachusetts don't like the way the windmills look, but they don't want oil, they don't want nuclear. We don't know how they're going to get power yet. We're trying to figure out, what they want, because This is a very interesting debate that Lisa and I have on the floor, but just to show you, Rosemary, this forest issue. Think about this. The people that own trees and own land, they say, oh, this is going to be a bonanza. Maybe we can chop up our trees and make energy. Then for the other door of our office comes the box and the cardboard makers that say, hey, wait a minute. If you use the trees to produce energy, our prices go up when we produce paper and cardboard, and absolutely not, Senator. You can't let them take their trees and produce energy, because then our prices go up and our people lose jobs. Then when it comes to agriculture, like Blanche, and we have sugarcane, the sugarcane producers in our state are not real excited about turning over their fuels, even though Brazil has. You think we would be naturally? I've talked to them till I'm blue in the face. If some of you are here, the sugarcane, you can say. They say, Senator, we kind of like our program the way it is. We're used to our program. We grow sugar. We like to sell our sugar to this place. We're not sure about how this major change, converting to using our sugar cane for energy. And then the candy producers come and say, if you're changing it to energy, where do we go get our sugar? And the price goes up. So would y'all pray for us, okay? Would y'all, don't just vote for us, pray for us, because this is a very, very difficult situation right now. Many Americans do hold that view, and they are frightened of nuclear. But there were reasons that people should have been frightened, in my view, 20 and 30 years ago that aren't true today. When we developed our nuclear plan, we sort of let every company kind of build whatever kind of reactor they wanted, because that's the way America goes about doing it. It wasn't maybe that smart. We had some technologies that weren't that good, and so the industry shut down out of fear. But as Senator Murkowski pointed out, there's some extraordinary technologies have developed to make that industry much, much safer. And we know it because France and Japan and other countries are now leading in this technology. So I know that there are people that are firmly anti-nuclear, but I really would urge you to just look again. Second point, no part of energy is risk-free. Every part has some risk associated, some higher risk than others. Higher risk to the environment, higher risk to the economy. If I thought that we could do no damage to our economy right now and keep people employed and keep people working, and I'd move 100% to renewable. But what would happen is, right now, if we did that, or go to something like 30% or 20%, people's electricity bills would go up, 10 times. And then you'd have a massive layoff in America. People would have a happy life. They'd have no food and no job. I wouldn't be reelected. We can't move that quickly. So when Lisa and I represent our communities, we have to look about what's good for the environment, but also how to do it in an economy that can absorb these changes without throwing lots of people out of work, with making portfolios worthless overnight. And I'll tell you all, this issue of transportation. Our industries right now come to my office every day, say, Senator, these railroads are driving us crazy. You know why? Because there's so much coal in our railroads, and there's limited rail because we haven't invested in it as a nation. There's a lot of coal in our rails. They can't get the other things they need into their plants, so the rates are going up. When we talk about building more coal plants, it's not just like Lisa said, the plants. You've got to bring a truckload, I think, of 110 cars a day to a coal plant to keep it fired. Do you know how many cars in a train full of coal has to go every day to a coal plant? A nuclear plant takes one train every 18 months. One train every 18 months. A coal plant needs one train every day. So there are benefits to nuclear, that you're not clogging your train lines. So every piece of this affects something else. And there's transmission lines. Now, we have these great transmission lines in Louisiana. We know how to lay pipes. I know people get upset, but we lay thousands of miles of pipelines. We put up transmission lines because we produce and we send it to everywhere. There are places in the country that, while there's sun in the west, there's no way to get that power to the east because the states in between do not want the big transmission lines sited along the farms and cities there. And the question is, should the federal government come in and say to the states of Kansas, think about the middle, Kansas, Iowa, help me here, Missouri, wherever. Arkansas, thank you. Go to those states and say, it doesn't matter what your counties say. It doesn't matter the property owners here. We must lay a transmission line to get this wind from North Dakota to so-and-so. That's the debate we're having right now. And what is the answer? Should we lay it down and supersede, or should we let these counties decide? And if one county blocks the line, how do you go? Do you build around the county? So that is the regulatory issues that we're grappling with. So when people say, why don't we just go to wind? Because even if you built windmills in one part, we can't get the power to the part that needs it. Her mark, in the chairman's mark and in her mark, there's some predictions that in just commercial buildings in America themselves, we could save maybe something like 20% of our electricity by having just what Lisa said. So the question for the government is, how do we incentivize our building owners, our cities? And so we've put some tax credits, we've put some incentives, we've put some, and some requirements for efficiencies.
And history always repeats itself if we don't learn from it. And I believe we have. I believe we've learned from our mistakes with nuclear energy, and we need to realize that there are some fears that 3 Mile Island will happen again, but we have to look at what nuclear energy has done for us so far in these past 30 years. I mean, especially in the field of medical field, nuclear energy has helped us with chemotherapy, radiation treatments, the gamma knife, x-rays, thyroid problems, and other parts of the medical field. And I just think that in these past 3 decades, nuclear energy has proven itself to not only clean and safe, but also beneficial to us in other ways than just energy.
Well, maybe we should then perhaps, you just want to say you wanted to agree with the senators, right?
And actually, I had a question for Senator
Sorry.
Landrieu. You were saying about with the satellite images at night, how the U.S. was lit up and how Africa and India and the other countries seem to be darkened. Don't you think that with energy efficiency being the best way for conservation, that maybe the U.S. should turn off some of those lights that do light up?
Well, you may be right. No, we really should. It's a very good point. But what I was sharing is that it just shows the vibrancy of the economy. It shows general infrastructure, and maybe you're right. I mean, maybe we don't want to have a world, but I don't know how people function and live if there aren't lights at night. You know, I mean, everybody can't go around with a flashlight. Well, but they're living in what you'd call a sort of a non-developed kind of way. I mean, it's hard for them to have jobs in places where there's not electricity. Any power, whether you're, you know, you've got to have electricity. Now, where you get it from, it will light up. It doesn't have to be from oil and from gas, but there has to be an energy source for these countries to be able to develop, whether they're plugging their computer in or using a wireless cell phone or, you know, producing, you know, you've got to be able to run an economy past the time that the sun comes up in the morning and goes down at night. I mean, we did that in the mid-ages. I mean, we don't do that anymore. It's a 24-hour economy. And the fact is, you've got to keep it lit and powered 24 hours. The question is, how do you do that, you know, in the safest way?
You have lobbyists come to your doors. You know, you have the sugarcane folks, and should it be candy or should it be fuel? And should it be this or should it be that? With that as a reality, I can see some folks leaving this conference saying, well, you know, 2 sharp senators, but I can see why nothing will ever change or it will move glacially. Is that the truth? Or is it,
No.
what's going to happen here, I guess, as looking at your final comments?
I would just say that I am, despite all of the nuances that we've talked about and the realities of how difficult it is, I am very optimistic that we're going to move forward. I think this country is ready to make these decisions and to move forward. I am not discouraged about it at all, and I'm not saying that it's going to be a carbon tax. I'm not saying it's going to be cap and trade. I'm just saying that I believe that America understands across party lines that we are at risk, that our national security is at risk, that our environment needs some direct and immediate attention, and that we must help lead the world to a better, more secure, sustainable place. If any people know this, we in Louisiana know it. These children are owed our best effort. And if we don't work very hard, the place that they call home will literally no longer be here. Now, other states in the Union don't understand this as critically as those of us in Louisiana, but I think Alaska, because of their coastal issues and just the way their character is of their state, there's some parts of the country I find more in tune to this than others. When Katrina hit and this city went underwater, I don't think we needed any more of a wake-up call in this region, how precarious our situation is. And it's all related to how we use energy, how we reinvest in our environment. And so I'm encouraged. I'm not, Susan, discouraged. And while it's not, there's no silver bullet, there are dramatic steps that can and should be taken to get us on a more sustainable course. I personally think that it has to do with our national security issue and the challenge before America to try to become much more energy self-reliant. We may never be completely energy independent, but I think it is a major national security issue, which is also part economic and most certainly environmental. But sometimes we talk about the economics, sometimes we talk about the environment, but I want to keep America, I try to keep America focused on the fact that 70% of our oil currently is coming from outside of our borders, and much of it from places that are not friendly, they're not stable, and they can be absolutely downright hostile and do not share our views of freedom, democracy, and liberty. And so I think that although it's not on the front pages, it is an ever-present threat. So I look at energy security not just from an environmental challenge, which it is, not just a challenge to getting it right so we can keep prices reasonable and keep people working, but I think the national security aspects of this sometimes wane. People forget. Is how overly reliant we are and how vulnerable it makes America. So that is why I'm pushing for more domestic production of oil and gas, yes, but also domestic renewables so that America can be more energy secure and then we can be in better control of our own destiny, not so reliant on outside forces.